Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. A question's been asked by a Kalyanamitta, and it says, I have read Dhatuvibhanga Sutta, this is Majjhima Nikaya, discourse number 140, and found that I want to do the meditation with regards to the elements. Can I read the words from the sutta on these 5 elements, so this is earth, water, fire, air, and space, and contemplate as my guided meditation? Or do you have a more appropriate way to do this meditation? Can I have your guidance? When we study the Dhatuvibhanga Sutta, this is really the Buddha's explanation of the elements. The Buddha says, Bhikkhu, this person consists of 6 elements, 6 bases of contact, and 18 kinds of mental exploration, and he has 4 determinations or foundations. The tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who stands upon these determinations, and when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over him, he is called a sage at peace. One should not neglect wisdom, should preserve truth, should cultivate relinquishment, and should train for peace. This is the summary of the exposition of the 6 elements. So what is key here is the 4 determinations. So the Buddha speaks about the determination for truth, that what is true has an undeceptive nature, and that is Nibbana. Everything else is false and deceptive. He also talks about the determination for relinquishment, so the teaching on relinquishing all the acquisitions. The Buddha talks about the determination for wisdom, and this is coming to the knowledge of the destruction of all suffering, and the key meditation is about meditating on the elements. And the last is the determination for calm, and this is about the pacification of lust, hate, and delusion. The Buddha is really showing the way towards Nibbana. The Dhatuvibhanga Sutta is an important sutta, and we apply aspects of this teaching in many meditations. The meditation on elements in particular is associated with the determination for wisdom, Panya Aditthana. What I would recommend is the profitable path meditation. So we had a Dhamma session on this. The reason that I recommend it is because it incorporates many aspects of the Dhatuvibhanga Sutta, and particularly on the 4 great elements, as well as the 4 determinations from the sutta. What we do in this meditation is to overcome the 4 floods. When you have the determination for relinquishment, you overcome the flood of existence. When you have the determination for wisdom, then you overcome the flood of views. When you have the determination for truth, you overcome the flood of sensual desire. When you have the determination for calm, you overcome the flood of ignorance. So you can see that you are working through non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. The profitable path meditation really helps us to build up the right view before even contemplating the elements. Sometimes we don't have sufficient wholesomeness in the mind to lift it. So this meditation is really helpful. The gatha that the Buddha gives in the Chunda Sutta or Mahaparinibbana Sutta is, by giving merit grows, no hate is stored for one restrained, one who is skilled abandons evil ways, with exhaustion of lust, hatred and delusion, one attains complete extinguishment. With the development of merit in both giving or generosity and also in virtue, the mind is lifted enough to contemplate the elements. So you contemplate, in this case, the 4 great elements, and internally and externally you see it as it really is, that it is not mine. Therefore one becomes skilled, abandons the evil ways through body, speech and mind, and you keep meditating until you make the determination for truth. At this point you would have entered from form into formless, either space is infinite or beyond that. And if you keep meditating on that, with exhaustion of lust, hatred and delusion, one attains complete extinguishment. So this meditation leads you to the determination for calm. You can see that when you do this meditation, you go beyond form to space or other formlessness. And if you've listened to the Real Emptiness Dhamma session, then you will see the connection in the initial part of the meditation of emptying of form to formless. Now the way to contemplate each element, I'll put this in simple terms with an example or 2. So with the earth element, the Buddha talks about the earth element may be either internal or external. What is internal earth element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified and clung to. That is head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, contents of the stomach, feces, and whatever else internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified and clung to. This is called the internal earth element. Now both the internal earth element and the external earth element are simply earth element, and that should be seen as it really is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. So if we take an example, take head hair. We see a pile of hair on the floor at the hairdresser or barber shop, and we wouldn't take any of that pile of hair as mine. Therefore, when you contemplate, why would we take the hair on our head as mine? Same for the hair that we find in a plate of food when we're out to eat. When we see that hair in the plate of food, we do not take that as mine, and therefore you contemplate or reflect, why would I take the head on the hair as mine? Now if we do this with each solid part of the body, as has been outlined by the Buddha, then we will have the right view that this is not mine, I am not this, and this is not myself, both internally and externally for the earth element. So in the meditation, you go through and use as many examples as possible of the different internal elements that the Buddha is listing. With the water element, the Buddha says, the water element may be either internal or external. What is the internal water element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is water, watery, and clung to. That is bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spittle, snot, oil of the joints, urine, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is water, watery, and clung to. This is called the internal water element. Now both the internal water element and the external water element are simply water element, and that should be seen as it really is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. So if we take phlegm for example, we see someone has spit phlegm on the side of the pavement, and we wouldn't take that phlegm as mine. Then why would we take the phlegm inside the body as mine? So that is a reflection that you can do. And another example is urine, that if you see urine by the side of the road or a dog urinating on a tree, you would not take that urine as mine. Therefore, when you have urine in the body, why would you take that as mine? So again, for any watery part of the body, you contemplate it externally and internally, then you develop this right view, this is not mine, I am not this is not myself, for the water element. You may need to do as many examples as possible, just running through the list that the Buddha has given. And then we have the fire element, and the Buddha says, the fire element may be either internal or external. What is the internal fire element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is fire, fiery, and clung to. That is, that by which one is warmed, ages, and is consumed. And that by which what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets completely digested, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is fire, fiery, and clung to. This is called the internal fire element. Now both the internal fire element and the external fire element are simply fire element, and that should be seen as it really is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. So we can take the example of taking out rubbish that we put into a dustbin. As you know, there is a lot of heat emitting from that rubbish, and that heat we would not take as mine. So therefore, whatever heat that is in the body, why would we take it as mine? That's the contemplation. The same thing with the sun. The sun emits a lot of heat. Again, we don't take that heat as mine. So therefore, any heat in the body, why do we take that as mine? So you do this contemplation for as many examples that are heaty or fiery. Then you have cultivated the right view that this is not mine, I am not this is not myself, both internally and externally for the fire element. We have the air element, and the Buddha says the air element may be either internal or external. What is the internal air element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is air, airy, and clung to. That is, upgoing winds, downgoing winds, winds in the belly, winds in the bowels, winds that course through the limbs, in-breath and out-breath, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is air, airy, and clung to. This is called the internal air element. Now both the internal air element and the external air element are simply air element, and that should be seen as it really is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. So if you take the wind that blows all around us, say you're walking on a very windy street, you wouldn't take that air as mine. Therefore, why would you take the air that you breathe into the body and breathe out of the body and temporarily retain in the body as mine? Likewise, you could take air that is blowing through a fan. You don't take that air as mine. Therefore, even if you expel air from the body as a fart or wind that comes from the body, again, why would you take that as mine? Therefore, you do this for whatever airy examples, and if you do this correctly, then you cultivate the right view that this is not mine, I am not this is not myself, both internally and externally for the air element. And then we come to the space element, which is the final one that's been asked in the question. And the Buddha says, the space element may be either internal or external. What is the internal space element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is space, spatial, and clung to. That is the holes of the ears, the nostrils, the doors of the mouth, and that aperture whereby what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets swallowed, and where it collects, and whereby it is excreted from below, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is space, spatial, and clung to. This is called the internal space element. Now both the internal space element and the external space element are simply space element, and that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. If we go to work and we are in a workspace, we don't take that space as mine. So therefore, when we consider the space inside the body, all the cavities, canals, we shouldn't take that as mine. And so that's the contemplation. Whatever spacious examples, if you cultivate the right view that this is not mine, I am not this is not myself, and you do this internally, externally for the space element. When we do this meditation on the elements, it's quite common to encounter difficulties with some parts of the body. The encouragement is to go through as many examples as needed through each of the elements in order to truly see it as not me and mine. It is our ignorance and delusion about the body that is largely when we lump it together to make the body whole. That's when we misapprehend it as me and mine. When you look at the word kaya, kaya not just translates as body, but it translates as heap or collection. And when we look at the physical nutriment, kabbalinkara ahara, kabbalinkara is also translated as lumping. So kabbalinkara ahara, although we call it physical nutriment or edible food, it can also be translated as lumping food or lumping nutriment. So you see that quite often we misapprehend because we take the whole collection together as a whole rather than its parts, whether it's elements or parts of the body. It's when you contemplate it as parts or as elements that you truly see and activate the right view of the body. So if you go to the Kayagata Sati Sutta, you really get that idea. So when you look at body parts, the recommendation is to look at the 32 parts of the body, which is essentially what we do when we look at the elements as well. The Buddha gives this simile of a bag with openings at both ends, filled with various kinds of grains, such as fine rice, wheat, mung beans, peas, sesame, and ordinary rice. And someone with good eyesight were to open it and examine the contents. These grains are fine rice and all the things that were said. In the same way, a mendicant examines their own body, up from the soles of the feet and down from the tips of the hairs, wrapped in skin and full of many kinds of filth. So what you see here is if we are to truly activate the right view of the body, one needs to unlump it or unheap it and look at the component parts rather than simply as a whole. And so when we look at right view of the body, we are also looking at right mindfulness of the body. So the Buddha says in the Kayagata Sativagga, when one thing is developed and cultivated, there is the penetration of many elements, the penetration of diverse elements, the analysis of many elements. What one thing? Mindfulness of the body. When this one thing is developed and cultivated, there is the penetration of many elements, the penetration of diverse elements, the analysis of many elements. And again from the Kayagati Sutta Sutta, This is Majjhima Nikaya 119. The Buddha says, a mendicant examines their own body, whatever its placement or posture according to the elements. In this body there is the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element. It's as if a deft butcher or butcher's apprentice were to kill a cow and sit down at the crossroads with the meat cut into portions. In the same way, a mendicant examines their own body, whatever its placement or posture according to the elements. In this body there is the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the earth element. So again here you see that you are unheaping what we collect or see as a whole in terms of the body. So when you do this meditation on the elements, or even meditation on the 32 body parts, you strongly resonate with the Buddha's words when he says to Venerable Ananda, it is Ananda because it is empty of self and what belongs to self, that it is said, empty is the world. And so when the Buddha talks about empty of self and what belongs to self, this is really saying it is not mine. So when it comes to any form, whether it's form made up of earth element, water element, fire element, air element, or space element, none of that is mine, and therefore it is empty of self and what belongs to self, both internally and externally. So all the things that you think also belong to you, that you see through eye consciousness, eye contact, and all the different sense contact, sense consciousness, whatever feeling arises as a condition, then you also see everything as empty of self and what belongs to self. And at that point, you have fulfilled the determination for wisdom. When you do that, it's quite easy then to see this determination for truth. Everything around that is conditioned is false and deceptive. And therefore, at that point, if you make this determination for truth, satchadithana, you see that the only thing that is true and not deceptive is nibbana. So very, very powerful in its totality. We can end our session here. Let's share the merit with all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. Blessings of the Triple Gem. Wishing you all well. Teruan Saranai.